As I grow more in natural farming, my vision of what I see is so much more than just like, oh, I have some deficiency because of this. It's like taking a step back, looking at the bigger picture, seeing, okay, maybe, you know, what in the ecosystem is causing this. And it's good to know the chemistry lenses to know, oh, maybe it's a boron deficiency. But to like look at the larger environment and be like, well, can we make this whole thing healthier so that the natural system is functioning, versus me always having to put things, you know, and add them to this scenario. How do we get it, you know, self-sufficient that way, and using the power of nature already. And the more you can integrate livestock, they're your composters at like a rapid speed. They'll take a whole carrot and make it into, you know, goop in hours, versus that would take a compost pile and microbes days or weeks to do. We just came from Rachel and Dan's place where they've been able to put these principles into practice. They really got it going on, so I'm glad to see sharing and getting this education out, because when you see it in action, then it makes it really easy to implement in whatever situation you have.
The roosters will start crowing at like 4:35, and then so they really are up and lively at first light. They like to be up running around super early, and just they never stop eating. They're kind of a jungle bird, and they just never stop searching for food. That's their whole day, scratching, digging things up. But left alone, they will form family groups. They are real social, and the roosters will join in trying to help with the chicks and stuff. They're really quite family oriented, and they're just adaptable. They just adapt. I have been around chicks. Like I said, the first book I ever got at the library, How to Raise a Chicken. And so I've really been into chickens all my life. I've been to a lot of different chicken owners, and everybody takes care of them a little different. And the chickens adapt to it, and they're tough. I think they're one of the first domestic animals. I really go back looking at the history of them. Egyptians, 3,000 years or better, they've had chickens. So they're really just part of our being civilized, I think. They just, every culture has them, but yeah, and they're all different. The way people take care of them. But this is one of the optimums.
Korean natural farming, which we learned about from Drake. You know, it just sounded really perfect for a low maintenance, clean way to raise chickens. There's no cement floor. It's just an earthen base, a couple of feet down, started with very large logs. And that's just to give that fungal base. So you're growing lots of mycelium and fungi.
Mycelia.
We did an inoculation with lab, the lactic acid bacteria. I had some old lab, and I just thought this should still work, and I just added some water, spritzed it around. But I really think it's just the chicks are gonna create that fungal material by themselves, and it just started to work right away. You know, there's some of our touches, like the nesting boxes have flashing above them to keep rats and mongoose from jumping up there and getting in, and we've never had any problems in the coop itself with any rats or mongoose. There's just this one egg here. Yeah, so then you don't have to go in and bother them. But like I said, we hardly use that. We're kind of in there anyway, feeding them, and then we just gather up the eggs. The whole perch can be hinged out of the way.
I would say they're implementing a lot of the principles from Korean natural farming. And to me, the ultimate test is if you are walking through here at night, would you sleep in that building overnight? These ones get to go outside, but some animals spend their whole life in there. And if you would spend the night, all the principles that make that happen, you know, that's the ultimate question. And I would here. I'd sleep there. I mean, this chicken barn here is probably like, you know, it's like a model for everybody, like everyone in the world. This is like world-class site, you know. And so that's the future of chickens and poultry, I think, is biologically activated, you know, barns with caring, loving people producing enough and having it reinforce their food supply as well. And so they're living it here, and it's like that we're in it right now, yeah. So. I started natural farming with just right over the valley. There's a guy named Ginger John, and he got with Dr. Park, who had brought this from Thailand, and then later found out it was Korean technology, but has roots to Japan. I got an opportunity in 2008 to go on a field trip to Korea. Since then, got to see it in action in Korea, and kind of have been reverse engineering that. The other thing about chickens is it's not that much of my day. Like to come up here, make the food, mix the food, do it. You know, and Suze and I as a team, we can come up here and take care of all of our animals within half hour to an hour. We ferment a lot of our food here. So the preparation's done the day before, and we mix in the IMOs and a bunch of biostimulants like plant juice and vinegars and medicines. And that ferments 24 hours. So you basically come up here and putting that into the chickens, so they're eating this nice, rich, pre-digested food. Then we're feeding them some greens and also fruits. So up here, papayas and bananas are our choice. And we also, for greens, feed them a lot of banana leaves and just whatever weeds we would harvest. And then get the eggs, replenish their water, and thank them.
A little bit inside here, which is not the greatest practice. See, there's a bit of people here. Really get all there's one mama in the hen house. I think they've been breeding, but get some food. Go on. A carton. When I lived in Washington, when I was about 8th grade, I really wanted chickens. I wanted to experience that, and I got my mom involved. And at first she wanted to build the house first, and she was nervous about the whole process. I just brought home some chicks from the feed store, and we were like, okay, we're doing it. We're gonna build a house for them now, and we'll get this set up. And she absolutely loves the chickens. She ended up being like the real chicken caretaker, but it was really fun raising just a little flock of 5 hens, and just to have eggs and to have just the energy in the garden, and a little bit of manure for our herbs. We weren't growing much. I didn't grow up on a farm, but I always wanted to live on a farm as a kid. That was a dream for me. Now it's come true. Like with our home chicken coop, we'd have they'd roost and they'd poop into like a container, and we periodically would scrape it all out. And of course the poop smelled terrible, and just being in the hen house, you wouldn't want to stay for very long.
Key for the no smell floor is that it's dry. The poop comes down wet, and then the microbes, the only source of moisture is in the poop, so they colonize very fast. If your floor is wet and they lay up wet poop, there's no reason to go up into the wet poop, so that's when it starts to stink. So keeping the floor very dry is critical for these systems. Basically from the floor to your animal's nose, you want to have open. Otherwise, it can cause respiratory problems for the chickens or the pigs. Both of them, they need that from the ground to their nose airflow, and then the roof, as it heats up, it draws that air up. So nice, cool, fresh air comes in through the sides and cools it down in here. So it's also cooler in this building. And so that's important too. If your animals are overheating, they're sweating, they don't want to be productive and make an egg after sweating all day. So it's nice and cool in here.
I think it's really cool to participate in the creation of fertilizers and to have it all be right here. This closed loop system with the animals and the plants, and being able to make things quite easily.
I built this building out of metal primarily because I want it to last 50 years, hopefully. So I got to get up and power wash the roof and just keep it clean. The one thing about it is these IMOs they want to break things down. So any wood, any stuff you have around is going to get super dusty, and it's going to be covered in microbes trying to decompose it. So that's why my infrastructure is made out of metal as much as I can to try to avoid that. My framing here I did out of wood, just so it was easier. They're put at 4-foot widths, which is the same width as your chicken panel. What do they call it? Poultry wire is that 4-foot length. So I designed this building for that. Now, it's been through a few iterations too. This is building is 7+ years old. So I'm really trying to think of myself, make it as easy for myself as I can. So I come in and I need to make a modification that's going to save me 10 minutes. That's going to be years over time of savings.
Other pen, they used to be all over the place, and then we thought, I'll put a wall in here, and eventually raised up several flocks. But so with this, you start the babies out when they're really little in the smallest of the boxes. You have a door. And then as they grow, you expand the cage out and you put their food on one end and their little nesting area. They like a little something to go under, like their mama's wing, a little dark place to sleep. And so you put their food and their water on the opposite side of that, so they run back and forth and they get exercise. And then when you slowly expand it out, they all size the same. Is part of this. And then you feed them a certain way with the natural farming philosophy. You give them hard-cooked brown rice and curd and bamboo, and just a little bamboo so they know that the vegetables are very rare and special. And lots of food so they know that there's always enough. And the brown rice helps stretch their intestines and give them hearty digestive power for their whole life.
Like, even though there's bigger houses, why aren't all 2,000 birds in the same cage? They put them in 120 sections so that they bond, and there's as many roosters, and they have little clutches, and they have a whole social dynamic that happens. So when you scale smaller, you can totally, but just keep your roosters and your chickens together so they can form clutches and social order and have their little things that they do that adds to their chicken daily life.
For instance, this guy right here, he's a rooster. He shouldn't be in here because we have him. And then the balance is okay. It's about 12 hens to 1 rooster. As soon as you get way more roosters, there's stress and mayhem. So.
Well, in my case here, I have the right dimensions, but I only have about 40 chickens in there, where I should have about 120. So it should be about 3 times as many chickens or so in there, roughly. And then they would form better social order. They still, they scrap each other. They have, I also have multi-generational chickens and things. So, like when I go see them in Korea and they're loaded the right way, the chickens are just smiling ear to ear, just happy, content. Not to say my birds aren't happy, but there's more to it than that. As they go in small, tight areas, they love being close to each other. They love that, feeling they're homeboys, but not too crowded. They're funny animals, and I love watching them.
Go on. So there's always going to be dogs, even though we have a pig fence and a perimeter fence. And just for the safety of the chickens, we have put in a pretty solid fence. And also when they're young, they can fly out, and then for some reason they can never figure out how to get back in. So it just makes things a lot easier to invest in a good fence. We use stainless steel wire, a pretty small mesh. We have Trex type plastic decking so that we can weed whack against it, and also it doesn't rust against the ground. Yeah, so the fence we felt like was worth it. First, the whole perimeter fence, keep the pigs out. That's like your number one expense, and then I know within that I'm kind of envious of like people are like, oh, our chickens are just free range, but that just hasn't worked for us. There's just too many dogs, and I know the chickens would come down and hang out at our house, which might be kind of cute, but then you're always stepping in their poop, and it's not cute after a while.
One alternative to not letting them out all the time is to let them out late in the day. Have them in their pen, and that's what people can get away with. They don't get very far. They stay around the house. They go right back in. So that's the secret. Let them out after 4 or 5, even in the evening. They'll get to run around a little bit, get some free range, but that can work. And you're right there watching them. But you have the fence otherwise.
Yeah. Chickens are just like having a farmer friend, because they're eating your pests, they're eating your weeds, they're producing poop, really good manure, fertilizer, and eggs, they're just great. And they're really tough, and they don't get a lot of diseases. We don't do any kind of antibiotics, obviously, or anything like that, and the main thing is keeping them safe from predators, and just making sure that you don't have too many in a small space, and they have, just like with the airy coop, enough shelter. So I love farming with chickens. We kept expanding this area. It was garden, and I just I want to give this part to the chickens. Just let them garden. And for us, we were just doing everything we could to build the soil. We got here and the soil was very depleted, very clay, very acid. So we just wanted humus, we wanted leaves. And so just growing things that grow fast, like ice cream bean, that'll just drop lots of leaf litter. You can just build up your soil. And every time we planted something, we used biochar, we used IMOs just to try to improve the microbes in the soil. But now it's more about just a lot of chop and drop, and well, in here we don't really do much at all because it's just happening. It's just a natural small forest where leaves are dropping and chickens are pooping, and we can come in and harvest. Our veggie garden's over there, so we don't want the chickens to get in and out of the veggies. Everything in there is really happy. Well, this is like a young cacao, but you can see it doesn't even have like a pest problem. I mean, they're just between the chickens' manure and bug-eating habits, it's a great place to grow a lot of different fruits and perennial shrubs. So we have soursop, cacao, Malabar chestnut, black sapote, papayas, chaya, all kinds of different callow and edible hibiscus, and probably a dozen more. And lots of different bananas too. So the chickens obviously get to eat everything that drops. Loquat is another one that's in there, and so all we do is once in a while walk through, trim some things down, try to suppress the weeds that are less interesting to them, and they do the rest. So we obviously enhance their diet with coconuts and azolla, which is a little nitrogen-fixing pond fern that you can see on their water tub. So we grow that in other ponds and that are kept away from the stream, because that could be invasive. So we have like tubs and separate ponds. And then Steve or other helpers come and scoop some in there. It's a real high protein food for chickens. I've even read that it can replace a third of their feed. So we're working that up. It rains here enough. Their water is just rainwater. And if it's ever low, we fill it up. But this is just off of the roof. And then we like to keep the azolla because where the zola grows, there's always some little mosquito fish, and so you get a couple of fish in there that keep down the mosquitoes. And you don't want standing water with your chickens because mosquitoes carry the avian packs, and that's what gives, sometimes they get like all these black spots and warts on their wattle, and from leaving their heads out when they're roosting instead of tucking them under.
Oh.
And they get stung by mosquitoes. Yes, one after another, I've tried planting rows of things, thinking, oh, this is our crop. We're gonna plant, you know what poha berries are? They're the little ground cherries. They look like a tomatillo, but they're sweet. They're just delicious little guys. So they grow great up here. But again, I just tried planting rows of them, and we got a striped cucumber beetle that I'd never had a problem with before. It was just like, I'll start at this end and just multiply and move down the row. So we just don't plant like that anymore, you know. Poha here, poha there, tomato here. Because this is not the environment. Too much bug pressure. We thought, blueberries are so good for you.
Yeah.
But so we did the, kind of plant your rows, and then we really had the Chinese rose beetles. And we would go out at night with a flashlight, knock them into a thing of water, but they just got pulverized. And so we never really came up with a great deterrent. It just sort of naturally evolved that once we got more diversity and more taller plants growing around, that just, the rose beetles just got confused, or they'll pick something out that's alone by itself on a ridge. Right, we can't have chickens everywhere, so we want some of our nice, sweet, leafy greens for ourselves. So in that case, yeah, we just do a mixed bed as much as possible.
It's all about harmony and balance with life. And if it's already been through an organism, it's the more decomposition processes, the more it harmonizes. So then when you add it to your plants, they're like, oh yay, it's already like tuned. It's like getting a tuned instrument. I can just play it.
Chicken!